Fulton Sheen famously once said, "There are not 100 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church, but there are millions who hate what they wrongly perceive the Catholic Church to be." We can apply this same idea to forgiveness. We may be repulsed or unwilling to forgive if we don't have the right view on what this act really is. In our previous video, we talked about the necessity of forgiveness, that Jesus tells us to forgive, that it makes us more like God, even its natural necessity. In today's video, we're going to focus more on the terms. What is forgiveness? What are the things we're forgiving? What are the elements involved in forgiveness? To understand what forgiveness is, we have to understand anger, wounds, and resentment. So first, what is anger? Anger is a sensible emotion that reacts to an evil threat and by means of this defends the subject. It's something neutral in itself, that is, it's not good or bad in itself, but depending on its cause, does this stem from a rational act or an irrational impulse? We see many examples of good anger in the Bible. We can think of Moses after coming down from the mountain, seeing the people with the golden calf, or Elijah putting the false prophets to death, St. Paul in Athens, who is exasperated by seeing the city full of idols. On the other hand, there's also a bad anger that I think all of us know, and we've seen and experienced this. And this will manifest itself in outbursts and rage and a type of violence or whatnot. So while anger can be good, if it's something that's coming from our irrational impulses, it's more likely than not bad. Father Fuentes also makes a division between exterior anger, which manifests itself in outbursts or external actions, versus an interior anger, which is more of what we can think of like a pent-up rage within inside of a person that may not manifest, but nonetheless is still very strong in its intensity. So when we're talking about disordered anger, this is something that comes from a bad disposition. It can be also exterior, quick and acute, violent, you're presented with an object and you just are full of rage and you express it. It can also be something that's interior, something that's bitter and difficult, a grudge, a cynicism, a resentment. Father Fuentes talks about when we speak of resentment, we can think of it like an ulcer of the soul, something inside of us, hurting us, wounding us. What is the cause of this resentment? It's an inflicted wound, some evil that's brought upon us. And there are different types of wounds and different appropriate responses. So we can think of a wound that's within justice. So this could be a punishment for a wrongdoing. So perhaps a criminal stole and he's in jail and he's upset about that. In this situation, the way we would fight through this wound, recover, get over this wound, is we have to work on our understanding to see that within justice, this was deserved. I made a mistake and I must now pay the punishment. I must do the reparation. The second type of wound that Father Fuentes talks about is imagined. So this is an example where we have a disproportionate response. So we can think of a wife who is upset that her husband forgot to do a job around the house, or perhaps I'm getting bothered and upset when my friend is late to meeting me or forgets entirely. And the way we can respond to something like this is with a humble realism. We have to accept that others make mistakes, we make mistakes. Yes, there's a type of wound, but there's no proportion between our response and the ignorance of someone around us. The last type of wound is the most serious and the one that will relate to forgiveness. And this is an unjustly received wound. We can think of discrimination, offenses, abuses. This is where there is an act of malevolence. Someone does something wrong to us and with bad will. This can be something very deep within a person, something that can stem from childhood or from some traumatic experience in their life. So what's common to all the wounds is that there's one who's a victim of bitterness and resentment and suffers a terrible anguish. Father Fuentes brings up the old Chinese proverb of, "He who seeks revenge must dig two graves." That's because this type of pain actually is hurting us more than whoever wounded us. And so as we talked about the first two types of wounds, we have different ways of addressing those through working on our understanding and humble realism. But this third type, this unjustly received wound, is something that the only option will be forgiveness. And that brings us to the last point of this video, which is to actually define forgiveness. What is forgiveness? What is it not? Father Fuentes lays this out very clearly in the way of forgiveness, and it's very helpful for us to have these points in mind as we begin this way of forgiveness. So first, some clarifications. Forgiveness is more than accepting what happened, just whatever, no, it's fine. It's more than making our anger cease. No, I'm not angry, it's cool. He's not talking about that. It's more than a neutral attitude where I'm just unaffected. We can think of a stoic. No, nothing. Forgiveness is more than something to feel good. That is, it's more than something to just fix our emotions, to get us feeling right about things, to not be angry. It's something positive, it's something deeper, which he'll explain more as we go through this way of forgiveness. He lists several things that forgiveness is not, and I think this is one of the most important parts because I think this is where we get most confused on forgiveness. Forgiveness is not to excuse. Oh, they were tired. Oh, it was my fault. No, it's not that. We're talking about a real wound that was unjustly received. We can't just excuse it away. It's not to forget. No, I don't remember that. Or even intentionally trying to forget it. It's just burying it. That won't fix it. It's not just calming down because I may not have my passions flared up and be tense, but I still haven't forgiven someone. Forgiveness is more than simply saying words. The words have to reflect the reality, and if I haven't forgiven them and don't want to forgive someone and I'm saying it full of anger, that's not helping. That's not forgiveness. And lastly, perhaps one of the most important points we have to bring up with forgiveness is that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Why? Forgiveness is a step to reconciliation, but reconciliation requires both parties, which in some cases is not possible or even advisable. Now we come to the last part. Positively speaking, what is forgiveness? Father Fuentes gives us 3 points. First, it's the abandonment of resentment toward those who have offended us or hurt us unjustly. So we abandon our resentment, we let it go. It's the renunciation of revenge, something that we're entitled to by human justice. We've been hurt. And lastly, it's an effort to respond kindly to the aggressor with compassion, generosity, and love. Now that we've gone through what forgiveness is and what forgiveness isn't, and we've seen the necessity of forgiveness, we have the fundamental principles, the basic building blocks that we'll need in order to begin the work, which is the process of forgiveness that Father Fuentes guides us through in the second part of the way of forgiveness. We invite you to join us as we journey on this way of forgiveness. To stay updated with these and other formation videos, please subscribe to our channel, The Catholic Voice. Thank you and God bless.